Mary Catherine Ham, Brian Wilson, Brian Neiman, today's newsmakers, and you, the Morning Majority. 105.9 FM, AM 630. WMAL.
It's 7:07 on the Morning Majority, and we get to talk to Mark Tapscott from the Washington Examiner, old buddy of mine. Good to hear from you, Mark. How you doing?
Good morning, Catherine. How are you?
I'm doing good. So, the Washington Examiner endorses Romney today in an editorial called "The Only Republican Who Can Beat Obama," and also takes some shots at Newt, calling him part of the problem, not part of the solution. Tell me about it.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that the Republican nomination race has come down to a two-man race, and that's between Governor Romney and former Speaker Gingrich. And if that is the choice, we think that it's pretty easy to reach the conclusion that Mitt Romney is the guy who Republicans should go with, and especially because he seems to be the only one of the bunch that can beat Obama, which is the overriding priority for 2012.
Now, what do you say to criticism of, well, Gingrich led the conservative takeover, and he is therefore clearly the more conservative candidate, and why would we back Romney?
Well, I was there in 1994 on the Hill. I've been in this town for 30 years, and I've read Tom Coburn's book, and I know that Newt Gingrich is not a conservative. He is, I think, more accurately described as an establishment Republican, and that fact became very, very clear when he accepted the money from Freddie Mac to go to conservatives on the Hill, the real conservatives on the Hill, and try to persuade them to not do something about Freddie Mac and Fannie Mae.
Do you have proof of that? Because Gingrich, has denied that he was ever a lobbyist for Freddie Mac, that he was just a consultant and was telling them that what they were doing was just crazy. Do you have proof that he was actually on the Hill lobbying?
Well, Brian, there are thousands of people in this town who their careers are made on going to Capitol Hill and trying to persuade members of Congress to do one thing or another.
Sure.
They're not registered as lobbyists, but in fact, that's what they do. And this is a perfect example of it. And if you look at what Newt Gingrich said in the interview that he gave to Freddie Mac, which reads obviously like a pre-prepared interview, which they published on their website in 2007, it's clear what he was doing. He was trying to persuade the real conservatives to back off of reform of Freddie Mac.
I have a couple of questions about your endorsement. First of all, you say that Newt Gingrich is not a conservative. He's an establishment Republican.
Yep.
Well, a lot of people would say that about Mitt Romney. So that's one question. The second question is, why now?
Well, your first question, obviously Mitt Romney is from the Republican establishment, and that's, as we said in our editorial, he certainly is not a perfect conservative, but he is perfect enough to beat Barack Obama, and that's the bottom line. The second question, why now, is a very good question, and frankly, we had extensive discussions about that on the editorial board. The bottom line that we came to was that the dynamics of the race are such that it has become a two-man race, and as I said before, if that two-man race choice is Newt or Mitt, the choice, at least for us, is pretty clear. It's Mitt Romney. You
no doubt noticed that the National Review came out and said anybody but Newt. Are you surprised by that?
Wimps. Why didn't they just come out and say, well, if it's not Newt, then it ought to be Mitt? No, I'm kidding when I say that. I did not know that was coming from National Review, obviously, when I read it. I thought it was very well put, and I think National Review should be commended for saying those things. I think Newt Gingrich, he did great things as Speaker of the House. He did a lot of really stupid things as Speaker of the House as well. And when you have somebody like that as a candidate, you're naturally going to have an awful lot of disagreement, particularly among people like conservatives who love to argue with each other anyway. So, nobody should be surprised that we've got a lot of controversy about that.
We're talking with Mark Tapscott with the Washington Examiner. They've endorsed Mitt Romney this morning. I wanted to pick up on a question that Brian asked you. You write in the editorial that Romney has become the reliable conservative. When did he become the reliable conservative?
Well, I got into politics. Let me just give you a little history here. Because of Ronald Reagan, I was in my living room as a 14-year-old kid in 1964 when Ronald Reagan came on TV and gave what we now know to be the speech. That made me a conservative, and I have been a Reagan conservative ever since. But Reagan also went through, call it if you will, for lack of a better term, of something of a political journey. He signed what was at the time one of the most liberal abortion bills in the country in 1967, but later became a very vigorous and devoted pro-life advocate. Mitt Romney has traveled a somewhat similar path. He was pro-abortion by his own description until he studied very deeply the embryonic stem cell debate and came to the conclusion that the pro-life people were right. The abortion culture was producing a lot of very terrible consequences in our country, and he changed his view. It's not unusual for politicians to change their views. Our point is, as Romney has changed over the years, he has changed in the direction of a more conservative perspective, which the nation has done as well.
There is a really interesting shift I've noticed among grassroots folks who have, everyone's looking for the non-Romney, and they've settled upon Gingrich as the fourth or fifth choice now of non-Romneys, and now he's the true conservative. But several years ago, the exact same people, I feel like, were attacking Gingrich pretty accurately as a establishment Republican for his Didi Skozafava backing in the New York special election.
Mary Catherine, it's very interesting. Many of the people that are upset over Mitt Romney's position in the race today, or who are critical of him, supported him 4 years ago against John McCain.
Right.
And if you compare John McCain's voting record with Newt Gingrich's record, you might be surprised to find that John McCain may well come out as the more conservative of the two. It's like I said, there is a great deal of winnowing and argument and back and forth that has to be done to reach a consensus decision that most of the people in the conservative movement and the Republican Party will support. We think when that process reaches its conclusion that it will be pretty clear that the right choice is Mitt.
Does it say something about the abilities of the Romney campaign that he went in just a couple of years from being the conservative alternative to the establishment rhino figure in people's minds?
I think that says more about the dynamics of American politics and something that happened in between those two events, which is Barack Obama. Barack Obama, frankly, has changed American politics in so many different ways, and just the fact that he defeating him and preventing him from having another 4 years has become the priority, at least in our view, for the conservative movement and for the country. I think explains an awful lot of why the race has developed as the way it has this time around.
Well, Mark Tapscott with the Washington Examiner making a big endorsement today of Mitt Romney. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Morning Majority.
Well, it's my pleasure, and you guys do a great job.
Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.